Welcome to the CodePlay Culture podcast, where we discuss tech, gaming, health, and the world around us.
Welcome back to another exciting, amazing episode of CodePlay Culture podcast. I am Logan and co-host Rui. Rui, what's up? What's going on?
Not much. Just here, man. Just here living the dream, working away, enjoying this awesome podcast. I'm glad to talk to you today. And we're going to talk about some cool stuff right up my alley. And that is video games, of course.
It's like the best deferment from whatever you have to do during the day.
Oh, yeah, it is. It is absolutely the best. You're having a bad day and you just think of those games, man.
It's funny. Right, yeah. Like it was like with your like topic suggestion. And I was like, okay, we could do OpenAI, DALL-E 3, ChatGPT 4 Turbo that was announced a few days ago. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, how about games? And then you could see the cortisol dropped and like the endorphins went up. Like, when you get excited, man. Yeah. Yes. So this is the like no cheat codes level of you grinded, you got it. You either got good or your character got good or a combination of the two. Mm-hmm. Can I just, the one I just want to get to right away is Final Fantasy 8, the one with Squall and the Gunblade.
Yeah, I actually missed that Final Fantasy. I didn't get to play that one.
I think a lot of people kind of missed or slept on it a bit compared to 7 but that doesn't even make sense because like coming off the 7, wouldn't it be more popular? But I think people got back into. I think 9 was more popular, but I'm basing that off of
9 and 10. Like I played 10. I went from like 7 to 10. It's almost like nobody could compete with 7. Mm-hmm. And when 10 came out, it was graphically superior. So just made that jump.
Yes. I love that one. I bought a PlayStation 2 like Slim like for, well, actually my parents got it for me for Christmas. I'm not going to brag like, I bought it. I'm young enough to say. Yeah. So that was like the last boss. And don't worry, everyone, there's not going to be any spoilers this entire show. We won't do anything like that. I'll just say the last boss of any Final Fantasy game is hard, right?
Right.
Undoubtedly, a lot of these bosses are like multi-part where like you beat it, you're like, yeah, I won. And then you fight them again, like a different form, third form. And then sometimes like in different, like, there's like a fourth and you're like, oh no. And sometimes it's gapped by like a cutscene of like 45 minutes. And you're like, yeah, got it. Getting the popcorn, starting to head out, like just watching the cutscene. And then it's like, and then you get into the fourth one and you just die. You were like, what? And then the save point is like, so I'm like, But this one was one of the reasons that it was so tough is, and I remember, chronically biting my shirt, like, like as a nervous habit, like biting your nails and like walking and standing with the controller as the boss fight is going on.
Yeah.
And it was mainly because my characters were like a level 100. And in Final Fantasy 8, the higher you get the level of your characters, the enemy's level goes higher.
They scale, eh?
They scale. So it's actually better in Final Fantasy to not be at a high level when you're ending the game because it's going to be so friggin' tough.
It's so counter to everything you've learned in RPGs, right?
Now I friggin' realized that, I guess, either after I beat it or maybe during, and I'm like, well, I'm already whatever, might as well just try. But yeah, that was one of the reasons. It was just so friggin' tough. And it's weird. The stat scaling is super weird. You draw your mana or magic from like mobs, right? You're like, you see some kind of lizard walking around and then you just like draw like magic from them, right?
Right.
And then you can take that magic, let's say it's like water or like air. And let's say you get 100 like, balls of water, right? Then you can assign that to like an attribute on a character. So you would take 100, I think that's a max, and you assign it to Squall and you put it on his, I can't remember if it's weapons or you put it on attributes, but you put it on his strength, whatever it is. So if you're able to find like the most grotesque, incredible spell for all of your characters and just dump it on the stats, you'd crush all the bosses. But
Right.
I wasn't able to find like those huge, big, unless it was just by accident, right?
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
No, that's
So,
good. You know that feeling when you're when you're fighting a boss for such a long time. You know, like you said, you're into like your second, third, fourth iteration. All you want to do at that moment is defeat that boss. It's all you care
mhm.
about. You just want to defeat it. You just want to get it over with. And then the moment it's done and ends, you just have that nostalgic feeling. You want to get back into it and start playing again, right?
Yeah,
You almost miss it. It's torturous to that point, but you do miss it after you're done with it. After you complete it, you have that feeling of longing. Like you want that to be immersed in that world again. You almost hope that you didn't finish it. I mean,
yeah,
that's how I felt.
yeah. And then you go back to those games and you're like, yeah, I'm like 7 years later, I'm going to replay it. And you're like, oh God, these graphics
It's
are
graphics.
awful. How did I even love this? Right. I mean,
Oh
it's
yeah.
kind of cruel, but then, I mean, at the time it's like, we just been so spoiled. Right. So
Yeah.
when they do a true like graphical upgrade of a old one, like a remaster, not a
Mhm.
remake, like that's like caviar to like
Oh
our
yeah, man.
childhood. Like it's so good.
Yeah.
Um,
Like Nino Kuni when they did the remake, sorry, not remake, remaster on PS4. That
yes.
was
I
amazing.
love that. Yeah.
Completely amazing.
Yeah.
And that was
And
such
then
a good game on PS3.
the fourth, sorry, this
Mm.
fourth, the second and first I noticed was on Xbox Game Pass the other day. Um,
Mhm.
I tried it out. Do you ever try, like, do you have an Xbox or you just like straight Sony end to end?
I don't have an Xbox, but I had the PC pass and
Okay,
I
cool.
played, yeah.
Nice. It's kind of nice, like a Netflix kind of service. It's not just like people think it's like, oh, I want the full blown whatever. So you can still download it, right? Like you could like cloud stream
Yeah.
like a Netflix, but then that's great for trying it.
It's
I
good for
believe it
trying
all.
it, but what
Yeah.
happens when they remove it? Right? You lose access to the game. I had a game where they removed and I couldn't log back in or play the game.
Mm. I assume that
So
it'll
that kind of sucks.
save your local save. So if you go and get the disc, right?
I don't know about that.
Dude,
That's
there's no way that, like, imagine you're like, and then they pull it and they're like, oh, all your game data is gone for that too. Like, hey,
Mm.
look, I had every cheat. You can't do that, right? Like when you pay for like the cloud saves
Yeah.
specifically on like PlayStation Plus, like I would hope, because that would be like
Mhm.
that would be a table flip boycott of like,
Right.
can you imagine you get so like you put like 80 hours into a game and they're like, we're pulling it. I'm like, why? The developer didn't pay their fees or something.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's only
What?
there for a certain time period, right? They have their incoming and outgoing,
Yeah,
stack of games. I'm not a huge fan, man. I don't know about that. Those services.
yeah, I'm not either.
Yeah.
You know what I realized? It's the same with Netflix.
Hmm.
I I must have just been drinking the Kool-Aid,
Hmm.
because you know how you go and it'll say Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision when you're
Yeah.
like watching Netflix movie, whatever. I'm like, I had the exact same thing on 4K disc. I'm like, well, might as well use the disc, right? And it
Right.
sounded and looked completely different. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm talking about, I got, and I think you got pretty reliable internet connection too. I have
Hmm.
1.5 gig in and out, meaning like fiber to the in directly into the house, not to the
Yeah.
node, not to the curb, right out to the nearest whatever. And then 1.5 gig up and 1.5 gig down, like
Hmm.
gigabit Ethernet for the Xbox connected to it.
Right.
So like it just, so there's no like streaming issues, right?
Right.
Um, I'm like, but it was way better. I'm like, you have to like running it locally is so much better,
Oh yeah,
like,
it is. It is.
and
Anybody will tell you. I mean, when it's coming across fiber, yes, it's fast, but you're not getting that highest bit rate you can get. I
yeah,
think that
exactly.
may be impossible right now.
Yeah. And like by the
Perhaps one
time it
day.
is one day possible, they're probably going to have some 20K thing that you can't, you got to like,
Hmm.
whatever. Like it's always, it's like that offline mode in apps or whatever. Like
Yeah.
you can just like immediately update the UI on the client and then post it back to the server whenever you can. But when you're
Hmm.
streaming it, like
Yeah.
you're reliant on bandwidth and all this shit, right?
Yeah.
But
Exactly. And the distribution of data between all your devices, all of that, comes into play, right? and it degrades your bit rate. But going back to the games, I tell you what, man. Have you ever heard of a game called Silent Hill?
Yeah, it's good. I like
Oldie.
it. It's like it's not that scary compared to like Fatal
Yeah.
Frame and all this other stuff, but
Oh
I do like
goodness,
Silent
dude.
Hill.
It was a pretty good game. Extremely difficult.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Fatal Frame. You played that?
Unfortunately, like it's
What a
just
crazy
unfortunately
game, man.
because yeah. Did you get far in that?
I finished it. That
Oh,
game
did you
gave
finish it
me,
alone?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I was younger. I was young when that came out.
mm,
That game gave me nightmares, let me tell you. It was scary. Completely scary, man. It was pretty easy. It wasn't that difficult to finish. It's kind of like a telltale. I don't want to say a telltale game. It's I don't know. It's very story driven,
mm-hmm.
but it's not difficult. Man, let me tell you, man, that scared the poop out of me for sure. And I played
There's
part
a
two, and I actually finished part two.
mm, they have a
So
remaster of that coming out. Fatal Frame.
yeah,
Um,
I don't think I can play it now.
mhm. Especially not at night. Like there's certain games where the kids want to sit with me, and they're not like inappropriate, and they're not like those games at all. I'm trying
Yeah,
to think of like one that we just don't play anything that could be a little scary when the sun is gone, right?
right.
The sun protects us from the shadows,
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
um, so
So no
yeah, middle of
Resident
the
Evil.
daytime for Silent Hill stuff.
Yeah, Silent Hill. It was good, man. It was a good game. Very atmospheric, very spooky, and not so much craziness happening. Right? It's not
Mm,
Resident Evil type of game.
yeah.
It's a little more like calm. And that adds to the fear or the fear effect, right?
Hmm.
That calmness. And yeah, when you're running around shooting stuff, there's no room to feel fear. You have a gun and just nonstop action.
Hmm.
There's no way to be scared. But when you're quiet, things are quiet for hours, and then you suddenly hear some kind of rustling in the leaves or something pops up. It's a lot more. It's a lot more. It has more effect.
Yeah, like Alien Isolation, or if you don't have like a gun or any
Hmm.
weapon, then you're like uber what's it called when you're well,
Yeah,
fragile or whatever the
yeah,
word
like
is.
Fatal Frame, right?
Yeah,
All you have is a
yeah.
camera.
Oh, oh, it's a ghost. Okay, yeah. Like, and then it just dies. I'm like, this is a great camera, right? And your friend's like dead. Like, why? It's like, yeah, you're fine. Like,
Oh
yeah,
man,
it's
that's crazy. But no, it's a great game. Speaking of isolation, Alien Isolation. Do you remember when the PS camera came out for PS3? I believe. No,
yes.
actually, it was PS4. So Alien Isolation on PS4. If you
Mhm.
have it, I believe it's a camera enabled game, meaning if it hears you move around in your house, the alien will
Mm,
hear you in game and come chase you. So you have to be super quiet with your tapping the buttons and moving around.
interesting.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, there's that reminds me of there's this game I saw on YouTube live stream or whatever. You have to have a microphone. It's like a PC only game,
Hmm.
and it's like you just have to survive for 1 hour or something. And
Yeah,
it looks like it's using like uh, Unreal Engine 5. It looks super real.
yeah.
I think it's in VR too. Um, and you have to use a microphone. So if it detects that, you're making sound and stuff like that, I think you lose the game when you get scared. So like if you do a like,
So it's a
like
monitor
game's
your
over. Yeah.
really, eh?
It basically says set your microphone within like this range and you move this like acceptable slider, like
Hmm.
whatever. And then but the game is like when you're in it, you're in this like jungle. It looks like graphics are just like there's no way that people would last an hour unless you were like just really um, adept to that kind of
Hmm.
feeling or just very
Right.
reserved. You
Or
know?
drunk, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
typically don't get scared when you're hitting the sauce, but
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
what? Going back to the hardest games, so Silent Hill would be on my list for sure. And going back to old school games, Mega
All of
Man. I
them.
don't know if you played Mega. They were
Yeah,
all built to
yeah,
like torture, but yeah, Mega Man was
yeah,
a extremely difficult game.
yeah.
Um, Speaking of no cheat codes, which is what this episode is called, I did use cheat codes in playing those games, especially Ninja Gaiden and stuff. I use
Which
cheat
like
codes.
which
Cheat
games
codes
you
are
mean?
awesome. Game Genie, or if you have it emulated, you can have an emulated Game Genie. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I ended up finishing those games
Yeah.
later on in life, right?
Cool.
Yeah, achievements, man.
The hard games, right? There's something to be
Mhm.
said about if it's too easy, like the game's not even like worth it. You ever like max out cheat codes and blast through it and you're like, this game is boring,
Yeah, and Saints
right?
Row. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like GTA. There's
Yeah,
some
it
ones
gets
like that.
boring when everything's unlocked. All
Yeah.
cars are unlocked. You get, unlimited powers, and it does get very boring.
So like when we're challenged, that's when like we evolve. And I mean, if you have like, I'm not sure the like on the hormone level for women, but for men, I'm sure it's the same for any human. But testosterone makes things feel makes effort feel good. Like when you
Mhm.
want to put in effort, it feels good. So that was
Yeah.
on like a Huberman podcast where we talked about that. So like when you're like, I really, really want to beat this thing and you can't get, and you just keep on throwing yourself at it. I'm like,
Yeah.
then you will kind of evolve, right? If you don't have these hard situations, you can't get past those. So if you're like complacent
Right.
or you've kind of done evolving or you've like whatever, you made a choice or you haven't, you're just like,
Mhm.
I'm done. I'm just going to play stuff that's fun. I'm not even going to
Right.
challenge myself. Like if you're in a growth mindset, you
Mhm.
always got to be um, kind of in constant pain, so to speak, or struggle
Yeah.
to try to like evolve, right? Or
Of
you'll never
course,
get
yeah.
past where you are. Um,
Yeah.
so like, if is there any game right now, just looking with that in your mind, looking back that you haven't got back to because it was just too friggin'
Yeah,
hard?
yeah. So going back to those old games, I think those old games were not built with that, idea in mind to make it
Mhm.
difficult
Yeah.
for the player to kind of evolve and get past these points, right? They were just made for people to play, and that's it. There was no
Mhm.
no thought behind that, right? They were
Yeah.
just made for people to consume, play. They were just difficult, and they mostly sucked, right?
Mhm.
Newer games, of course, they take a lot into consideration. There's a whole psychology behind game development these days,
Yep.
right? So I feel like Demon Souls and Dark Souls set the precedent for what it is to evolve in
Mhm.
a difficult situation, in terms of video games, right? So for
Yep.
me, it was Demon Souls. That was the one that I picked up
Mhm.
on Xbox, and I put it down and never touched again. I
Do you ever
could
think
not
about
get
it
past it.
after?
Yeah, yeah,
Did you ever it's almost like a bully that like got your girl and then you just like 20 years later it's at the high school reunion and you show up in like, all decked out whatever,
yeah.
some kind of Lamborghini, gull wing
Mhm,
doors, and then she's yours or something. Like you ever think about going back and because on PS5, uh if you ever get one,
mhm,
Demon Souls remaster is like bliss. Like you don't have to go back to like the Xbox One, but like that
mhm.
game, it like that's like the reason I got a PS5, and I've been happy ever since. I was gonna obviously get it anyways, but
Yeah.
oh man,
Did you
it's just
finish Demon Souls?
oh yeah. I
Yeah?
finished all of them, but my one that got away is
Mhm.
Sekiro or whatever. It's
Okay.
it's that ninja
Yeah.
kind of one, and the reason is there's no stats. It's
Mhm.
like you get like cool equipment upgrades, right?
Yeah.
But like at the end of the day, if you're not getting better yourself, you're
Mhm.
just gonna like there's no, okay, but put 5 in strength.
Right.
Yeah. So luckily Demon Souls, Dark Souls, Elden Ring, Bloodborne, they
Mhm.
all have stat boosting, level up kind of systems.
Yeah. Yeah, Demon Souls was rough, man.
Yeah.
I think that was the first game of that first genre, that first kinda, you know, guess what would you call that kinda genre? That
Soulsborne.
genre. What is it called?
Soulsborne? They call it Soulsborne
Soulsborne?
because it was Dark
That's
Souls, like,
yeah.
and then Demon Souls, then Dark Souls 2, then like Bloodborne, then Dark Souls 3, then Elden Ring, then
Okay.
even the new Armored Core has a lot of the Soulsborne features. But the
Mhm.
Armored Core, the one before all this, like huge like pop culture change in video game because of From Software. It wasn't like that. It was more like Mech Warrior, right? Like, but
Okay.
way better third person, whatever, Japanese style instead of
Yeah.
US style, whatever. But yeah, Soulsborne, because it's Dark Souls, I think it was like around, like they've been doing that for a bit, even the first person stuff, but Dark Souls really like then born as in Bloodborne, right? But they didn't really
Okay.
factor in this Sekiro name, but yeah, Soulsborne games. A lot of
I actually
clones.
didn't play Bloodborne. I have not tried that. What do you
Oh,
think? Is it any good?
that was my first. Okay, remember your first was like Xbox Demon Souls, right?
Right.
Getting your butt kicked, and you're like, frig. I'm like, oh man, like so. Mine, I think we had talked about it in a bunch of episodes. Was Bloodborne, and like I bought it, returned it, bought it, returned it, bought it, returned it.
Oh
The third
yeah.
time I
Right.
kept it and beat it and loved it. Right,
Yeah.
I couldn't let
Nice.
it get away. Like it's almost like it haunted me, and there, I'm like, because the gameplay was just so infectious, and it just taught me like that whole Doom thing or that running gun where, yeah, I got like 10 bullets in the head, but I'm fine. Right. I'm like, everyone's 50 Cent,
Right.
no offense,
Right.
50 Cent, but I mean, like, there wouldn't be half the people on the planet that would take that many bullets and not
Right.
like immediately like slow down. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, or just get through it.
Right.
So it really teaches you that like, you got to be careful. This one swing from this enemy, it's going to put you on your back. Right.
Right. Have you tried any survival games? Are you into that?
Yeah, a survival horror or survival in general. Like you mean like Metal Gear Solid is or Resident Evil.
I mean, like The Witness, or
Mm.
sorry, The Forest, or for example,
Oh, you
Ark.
mean like
So
you have like you got to eat, you got to cook, you got to
yeah.
no, cuz I wasn't really that into like Minecraft level of like building and then going and hunting. I'm like
Mm-hmm.
I always felt like I was a ticking time bomb for like surviving.
All
Like
right.
which is kind of they need the Dark Souls level of
Mm-hmm.
reality check with those games in my
Yeah.
opinion, where like I like if I'm like 400 pounds I can fast for like I don't know 6 months, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like that's like I want the actual biological identical version
Actually,
of
that's a great idea, man. You should put in your like weight and your,
yeah, you're
you
just
know,
like it's like a cheat code at the beginning.
it's like
it's like then you
two
just
ton.
hibernate. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
username
whatever,
is
man.
two
You,
ton.
yeah, yeah. 1 ton,
Yeah,
1 ton of
one
Mara.
ton. One-
Yeah, man. There's a lot of cool survival games. I like them, man. I think they're quite fun. I tried Ark Survival Evolved because that came with my PS4 Pro,
yeah,
and that's the one that sucked. But there were some really good ones, man. There were some good ones. They're quite fun, man, and they're relaxing.
Hmm.
They're not chaotic at all. They're quite relaxing. You can just sit there and play a survival game and you know waste away your evening and
Yeah.
in a relaxed mindset with a relaxed mindset.
Do you play like those on what's your like balance of PC game to console game?
PC is like 80%.
Really?
Console would be like 20. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so you're like what society or I don't know, pop culture society would consider a gamer. Because I like some, that whole stigma of like, oh, you're a console gamer, you're not a gamer kind of thing. I'm like, look, I'm not playing Candy Crush on my phone, right?
Right.
And then someone that plays Candy Crush on their phone, they're like, hey,
He's like, I'm a gamer.
I'm a gamer. Like, what's this guy saying?
Yeah.
Unsubscribe from this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think anybody who plays games is, technically a gamer. And I would never, discriminate against one, medium over another.
Yeah,
If you play a game, you're a gamer in my
yeah,
opinion.
yeah, for sure. Why we got to get all that prejudice up in her, right? Like at the end of the day, like, you can't say that stuff was whatever, but yeah, that's how
Just
it
for the record,
starts,
though,
man.
PC's better. PC's
Yeah,
much
you're
better than
like you're
console.
bold enough to be like no prejudices, and then you're like PC's better. Like like mixed bag, eh? It's like when you
Yeah.
get that like Halloween candy and it's like there's a bunch of things in there that you don't know
Yeah.
what they are. That's a mixed bag.
Mixed bag of nuts. Yeah,
Yeah, man.
man. PC's where it's at. But I tell you what, yeah, there are a couple of cool. Oh, you know what game is awesome? I've been playing. Oh man, let me tell you about this game.
Yeah.
It's called Helldivers.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
awesome
So
game, man.
have you been thinking about it as well? Because we got our asses handed to us.
So that was the first time I played Helldivers. Was at your
Yep.
place,
Mhm.
and man, that game, like I fell in love with that game. Such a good game.
Yes, because of the friendly fire. For me, or how you could just die at an instant. And the thing is, it was very satisfying. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
like when like Colt and I were playing it, he's like, and something fell on me. He's like, "Oh no, my dad's dead." It's brutal. It's like I'll help you, dad. Or like it was so satisfying. Like yeah, like how could they say that video games train elite soldiers when there's friendly fire turned off, right? I mean,
Yeah,
Starship Troopers, you
yeah,
have to
no,
like have that Dark Souls friendly fire.
yeah. Of course. I mean, it just makes things way more more real, just more fun.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, yeah, good game, man. Good game. It was a good recommend
Yes.
for
And
sure.
once you get used to the controls, like really
I'm
dial it in.
I was used to the controls before I played the game. That's twin stick shooters.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am a gamer after all.
Fair enough. Well, I'll catch up with you. And that's not a mustard joke or a condiment. It's a compliment. Yeah, man. Big pun, rapper and the Joker.
Yep.
So sent a invite for Paulina for another episode. Miss her. It'd be good to have her back on stuff with the state of the world that we're in and stuff.
Oh, yeah,
Mental health
you're
and all that.
referring to mental health
Yeah,
and stuff. Yeah, yeah,
because
for sure.
gaming is very mental health. Like once you hit a game in the evening, you'll probably not hit a bottle in the evening, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, games are very conducive to a sane mind
Mm-hmm.
and well being for sure. They do have a magical power effect. I don't know if that's the right word. A
Yep.
positive effect.
Have you ever been up
I feel
against
like
a boss?
my vocabulary is dwindling. The more
Uh,
I drink coffee, the more the more brain fog I get for some
yes.
strange reason.
Yeah. So coffee, like I'm trying to like again get off of it.
Hmm.
But you got to go the nootropic route. But if you're gonna have coffee, like if you're going to, you just have to put in like a healthy amount of MCT oil directly in the coffee, so it's like
Hmm.
almost buttery. And then you take alpha GPC, right,
Hmm.
which is the choline. And
Yeah,
there's other things. There's a whole like market of like even Chris Williamson. He's like a
yeah.
really awesome YouTuber.
Hmm.
On November 3rd, 2023, he announced this new energy drink, and there's only caffeine in it, right? Like a little,
Yeah.
like a small amount, right? But the rest of it is all nootropics, right? All
Hmm.
actual vitamins of like expensive. He put like actual doses of everything to make you, more
Yeah.
focused. And the brain fog is, yeah, it's brutal. Caffeine's
Yeah.
not the one-stop shop for,
No, it's not. And I feel like
yeah,
water is. I just don't
yeah,
consume enough of it. But that because the brain likes to sit in water, right?
yeah, yeah. It's a juicy sponge. It likes to squirt. Like
Yeah.
the brain is like it basically goes around and it's like a rainbow like sponge and it just
Mhm.
squirts these different colors, right? It's like
Yeah.
dopamine's like, I don't know, blue and it squirts a little and you're like, yeah.
Just
Or
thinking
like
about Skittles when you say that.
yeah, it's like imagine like a big oily like wet brain and you squeeze
Mhm.
it and it's like taste the rainbow. So it's like just man, it's like 90s commercials.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's a vocabulary as I fucking as I say, it's like you got to work on it. And if you say the words twice, but it's tricky because you also don't want to say words that are you're trying to sound smart, right?
Yeah.
You want to
Yeah.
say things that people from any walks of life could you know drop in, listen, and understand what someone would be talking about.
Right.
Something
Right.
about understanding is more important than the
And using
depth of the
like
vocab. Yeah.
right. Right. Like we're not going to use like highfalutin words,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, that's
Bosses. Okay. So
bosses. Yeah.
bosses in general. Have you ever like been up against a boss? And
Mhm.
this is not a metaphor for work, right? We're talking about video games. Have you ever been up
Mhm.
against a boss and you're like, I'm gonna sell this game. And then like
So,
it's you know what I mean?
yeah.
You're up against a boss and you're like going and you're like, you die so many times, and you're like, you know what? I don't need this in my life. And you just like,
Mhm.
like you ever like given up on a game because of the difficulty of the boss? I mean, the game could be relatively easy
Right.
or medium, but the boss.
Yeah. Trying to think of any really, really tough bosses. Um, I can't off the top of my head. Like to me, the whole game's either extremely tough because if I'm getting to a boss,
Mhm.
I don't care as that boss is going. Like, I don't care how long it takes me.
Yeah.
He's gonna die.
Mhm.
But I need to get there, and if I get there, that means I'm enjoying the game.
Yeah.
Unlike Demon Souls, where I couldn't even get past into like the first 4 or 5 hours. I knew that game was gonna own me, right? How about you? Any bosses that stand out?
Trying to think. A lot of the last bosses for sure. You're like,
Hmm.
okay,
Yes.
here it comes, right? And you know it's going to be more difficult.
Hmm.
Mid game bosses, I don't know. There's like these also in Final Fantasy games. There's these like hidden optional real last bosses, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like this is the real one if you want the biggest challenge.
Yeah.
But no, I can't think of any. Just the
You know
last
what?
bosses kind of haunt me.
Yeah. Going back, yes, I do remember some last bosses, but they were not in a traditional kind of video game. It was World of Warcraft,
Mm.
and I got really hung up on the Lich King, which is a final boss in one of the expansions.
Mm-hmm.
And this took, I have to say, 6 hours to beat.
You say
Six
World of
hours.
Warcraft or Warcraft?
World of Warcraft.
Okay, so was that like a epic mob level of like you need a team to take him down?
Yeah,
Like
it was
because it's online, right?
right, it's an online game,
Yeah.
right? So it was a was it 40? 25 man raid, so 25 players,
Great.
and it was a guild. It was a guild run, so we took about 6 hours because of the amount of times we died.
Mm.
One or two people die, you have to start the whole thing over, and getting to that boss each time was a good 45 minutes maybe. I don't know. It
Mm.
was just insane. It happened a long time ago when that expansion came out,
Yeah.
but I ended up defeating him 6 hours later. Went into the night. We're talking like 2, 3 in the morning. Raid
Nice.
started early, and finally beat them. Got
What
the
did it
achievement.
drop?
Um, just a bunch of gear. I think he
Okay.
drops a mount, but
Yeah.
obviously I didn't get it because it's pretty rare.
Right.
I don't think anybody got it. But yeah, get the achievement, man.
Yeah,
Achievement.
man. Achievement unlocked.
Yeah.
We should have that in apps, right? Or in gaps, game
Hmm.
apps, graphical, applications
Yeah.
where you're just like cruising along and you're like
Hmm.
achievement unlocked, but then you can like use achievements to like buy stuff,
Dude, that's a
buy
great.
small
You keep
countries.
pitching these good ideas.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna get rich off your idea, man. Maybe you
Oh,
shouldn't talk.
hopefully they do. Cause when they do and they come back, they're like, hey man, that was like a good one. Here's a bone, and they just slip me like a $1 bill, but it's a $1 bill that's like very old. So it's worth like
Made
maybe
out of gold.
$2. Yeah. It's like a gold bar and it hits me in the head. I'm like, what the hell? It's like, boom, this is for your idea. I'm like, I'm in a coma at that point. It's like,
Dude, do you
backfired.
remember? Do you remember Mike Tyson's Punch Out?
Yes. Where he's like, like
Yeah,
he's like punching up because it's like the perspective. It's like, yeah. What's his name?
dude.
Mikey or Little? I can't remember.
Mac, Little Mac.
Little Mac.
Yeah, what a cool game, man. That's one of the games
Yeah.
where it's hard. It's all pattern based.
Mhm.
You get to the end, you face Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
It's all pattern based. He's very difficult to beat,
Mhm.
but it's all pattern and timing. If you do
Mm.
everything at that moment, at that time,
Yeah.
he's done. It was such a good feeling beating that game yesterday that I'm just
Yesterday.
kidding.
If you like that, the kind of finding the patterns and knowing the timing,
Mhm.
that's exactly what pretty much every boss fight in every Soulsborne game is like.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna die. It'll take you a while to get to the boss, right? It's like
Mhm.
going back to FF11. It's all right, you're going to walk from Bastock to Quaffam and it's going to take 3 hours. So I'm like, what are you doing with your life? You could have done something a lot better with that time. But I mean,
Yeah.
if depending on your age and depending on what you're into, I'm like, I just can't believe I lost so much. Like, I love that game. Don't get me wrong, but I'm
I know. The
very
time
conflicted
wasted,
with
man.
the time wasted versus the newer
Absolutely,
Final
man.
Fantasy 50, whatever I think it's 14 online
14,
is like
Realm
way more
Reborn, yeah.
fast paced. Like WoW, right?
Yeah, and
World
you
of
get to
Warcraft.
places quick,
Yeah,
fast travel and all that stuff. But yeah, man, walking and you won't even make it. You'll be dead by the
no.
time you get to wherever you're going.
They had like the auto run. Yeah, exactly. As soon as you get aggroed by some whatever, like mid level mob that takes 5 minutes to take down, and then if you're not a warrior, if you're like a red mage, white
Oh,
mage,
you're
you're just
done. Yeah.
toast. Like you're like white mage, even red mage, black mage. These are all fluffers for the tanks.
Mm.
You know
Oh
what I
yeah,
mean?
for
Like
sure.
they call them like when you're adding buffs and you're like, this is essentially just like a fluffer. You
Yeah,
know, so
they're
if you
fluffers,
get
man.
hit by like some kind of mob that has some kind of attack in
Yeah.
FF11, you're just toast.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
like,
for sure, man.
fuck.
And they don't leave you, right? Like you
No,
get
it's
aggro
like
at the beginning of this
perma
zone
aggro. Yeah, exactly.
until you leave that zone. It's
Yeah,
chasing you, right?
yeah.
Um,
And sometimes you'll basically get to that like invisible wall for the next zone, and you'll
mm.
load into the next one, and you
And he's
knew you
hitting you,
got
right?
hit. You knew you got hit right before,
Yeah.
and then you're in the next zone, and you're like, choom, and you die. You're like, oh my
Oh yeah.
god. So
Happened many
then you
times,
have to
man.
like talk to people and be like, can some white mage that's like level 60 come resurrect me?
Dude,
Because my home point is like Bastock and I'd have to
yeah.
walk 6 hours. I'm like, what is
And
going
then
on? Like,
and then there were people that didn't speak English, so you had to use those canned messages, right? Those pre-made messages, because those would be
yeah.
translated into different languages.
I, maybe I knew that at the time, but that is fascinating if you think about
Yeah.
the pre-canned of like
Oh, for
probably goes
sure.
through a localizer and like these are like pre-canned.
Hmm.
That's pretty cool.
But think about that. That's a great business model, right? Like charge people. I don't know what they were charging at the time. $11.99,
Mm-hmm.
$12.99 a month.
Yeah.
Make the game hard as shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And every time somebody kills you or you die, you de-level or you lose
Mm-hmm.
XP.
Yeah.
So you can effectively go back to level 1 if you keep dying.
Yeah.
So that's a great business model, right? Because it keeps the person paying, and you're never safe at the top,
Yeah.
right?
There's so much more good that can be. I think there's so much more good that can be done with this world if you remove capitalism from it. Like
Hmm.
Warren Buffett said, if you focus on the money, your business will never succeed. But if you
Right,
focus on helping people, the product, and what you love doing, there's no chance it will not succeed. I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said, don't focus
right,
on the money or your business won't succeed.
right.
That's easy to said than done, Mister. Sitting on a Scrooge McDuck
Billions.
pile.
Yeah.
Of like,
Well, it's the right attitude, right?
yeah,
You focus on the money, you lose sight of what's important in your business, unless your business is a bank. Even then, they focus on the customer, right? But
yeah,
if your business is printing money, maybe
yeah.
yeah, you can focus on the money.
Yeah,
But
exactly. It's like
I
if
think
there's no puns here or dad jokes underlying the printing money or money printing prints or a 3D printing company that prints 3D printers that print money,
yeah,
3D money, hologram, holodeck. But yeah, like don't focus on the money. The
Mhm.
old games, like 90s games, NES, reminds me a lot like how hard they were, right? They're all hard. Like
Yeah.
Sonic the Hedgehog, Genesis, you like, get to level 4, you die, you're back at level 1, no save
Mhm.
point, whatever.
Right.
So skate parks are like that, where you go to a lot of the old ones that were built of like,
Mhm.
they have like basically like, 2-foot quarter pipe, right? And it's like, you can imagine a pipe, right?
Yeah.
And a quarter of that is just like a little,
Mhm.
right? And they'll put vert on like a 2-foot. So like you have to go vertical on a
Yeah.
2-foot high quarter. But then if you look at the newer parks, they learn these lessons of like people couldn't actually do anything there. It wasn't really tailored to that type of a niche or whatever.
Mhm.
Video games are a lot like that, where like you said, they didn't really know what they were doing, or maybe they did. They're just like having fun, arguably whatever, ET in landfills or
Right.
Ninja Gaiden, where you just, it's so hard. And then when you look at actually Ninja Gaiden's a bad example. It's still hard. It's harder than Dark Souls, I find. Like I don't even know. I just die. I'm like, can't get past this first boss. I'm like, okay. Yeah. So, they learn these lessons over time. And then the arcade's really messed up, or that's a pessimistic view. They changed video games, right? They made it so that they need to make them harder to extract more cash from the user, right? So you can go up to the guy who's got that little clip on his hip with all the quarters and like, here you go, right? It's pretty cool. Yeah. And then, that made its way into video games, right? Yes, where they want you to die so much. And then when it got out of the arcade, at that point, like games seemed to become way easier.
Right.
They just wanted to keep you entertained at that point. But again, a lot of this stuff is like kind of themed around capitalism of like revenue generating, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Can you just imagine the creativity of like you and I, like, or anyone, just wake up every day and like forget about the money. You just have to help people do what you want and really just love what you do. Yeah. Like it's a completely different mindset. If you just put yourself there, like, and just imagine, you can just like base your day off choices in that, reality that will hopefully come one day. Right.
The question is, what will come of it? Right. Like, all the stuff we have now, let's say, games, they're awesome. Take away capitalism. Will we still have awesome games, or will people be complacent and just say, I don't have to do anything. So guess what? I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah. Like WALL-E, like the overweight people being driven around with like protein shakes or milkshakes.
I mean, we may not have what we have if you take that component away. Right. We may be sacrificing a lot.
Yeah. The flip side could be that in a world of complacency, it just takes people that are really passionate to introduce like some incredible games. They're like, you know what? I just love this. I made this for the world because if there's going to be that, but there's going to be a lot of people will be like, well, and that's could be coming, right? With all the AI, ChatGPT, the robots walking around, spanking your baby so you don't have to spank your baby. Bad example, like no one spanks anymore, thank God. As a kid that was spanked, probably just like you were.
I was never spanked.
Oh, nice. That's why you're like nice.
I was never actually spanked, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But, I get what you're saying, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I was never spanked, not
by parents.
Parent, but
yeah, you're going to go there, right?
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm not going there.
I was... Okay, yeah. I was going to like meet you there. Like, we got to get off that.
Let's just drop that one, yeah.
Yeah. Because unless we go further and like, man.
We don't want to get punished.
Yeah. Ooh. Speaking of a joke that's a bit punish, the Ghost Rider, the guy, the skull with the flame.
Yeah.
That's a Marvel character named Punisher too. I think he's just like a guy with guns.
The Punisher. Yeah.
I think that was like a really brutal Marvel movie or something, but kids are into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. right now, which is like a TV show on Disney Plus. Like I love that Disney Plus has Marvel. Like loving Doctor Strange. It's like just so many special effects and very like Inception, Christopher Nolan level of, directing and whatever. But so the episode the other day had Ghost Rider in it,
Yeah.
Just some like nice Jack dude turn around. It's like, holy shoot, he's like a skull that's on fire. I'm like, all right, maybe I'll pass on that hothead, right?
Yeah.
But like it was like pretty cool to see these little cameos.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I have not watched any Marvel movies in like a long time. Probably like 10 years. So I have no idea. I have
Honestly,
no idea where it's
straight hit Doctor Strange first. Like you'll love it. Like if you love sci-fi video games level of like it, and it's like very portally, right?
Yeah.
Like jump into wormholes and like multiverse. If you like Rick and Morty.
I do like that. I mean, I did, but if I'm going to sit and do anything for 2 hours, I'm going to play a game. It's not going to be watching anything.
Fair enough.
I can't do that anymore, man. I have a hard time sitting there motionless.
Yeah.
Right. I'd rather invest that time in a game.
I typically like just weightlift while I watch,
Mm-hmm.
or give my wrists a rest, because if you're working all day on the computer and then you like go play games, I'm
Yeah.
like, your wrists really never get a rest, kind of thing, right?
Right. Yeah,
So
you're right for
I
sure.
don't
And that's why you pick up
prioritize rest as much as I should.
and that's why you like if you're working at the PC all day and your wrists are hurting, then you pick up a controller, right? That's what the console's for, to fill that gap
Mm-hmm.
when
Yep.
you're working all
Yeah.
day and you need some game time.
Yeah.
But
I have found like I have this thing down here. You can't see it, but it's like, a keyboard tray.
mhm.
But it's like you clip it to the table and it lifts up and then goes and almost sits like very close to your like
Oh, I've seen
stomach.
those. Yeah.
And I can really bring my like squeeze my traps, like bring
Mhm.
my like, shoulder blades all the way back, which
Mhm.
is, I feel like it's really helping, because like that whole nerve, you know, ulnar nerve tunnel syndrome, or like any kind of wrist pain tingling from, if you're extended all day long like that, like
Yeah.
the antagonist of that would be like up here, right?
Right.
Or like completely antagonist, meaning the opposite typically helps it.
Mhm.
But dude, this stuff's like melting butter. Like if you have like a permanent or like a semi-permanent problem you've been dealing with for years, don't
Yeah.
expect it to change overnight. And by the time it's like fixed, you won't even like know, right?
Right.
So like, or sleeping positions or sleeping posture, like if you change that, it's going to take like months to correct whatever, poor
Mhm.
posture in general you've like thrown at yourself for years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But hopefully it gets better soon. I already feel better. Um, but yeah, good mouse, good ergonomic setup.
Yeah.
Changing your area once in a while, it's definitely
Yeah.
helpful.
That's good. For sure it
Do you
is. Yeah.
play any PC games, like, or you play console games through your PC? Like, you know how they have remote play?
No, I have never, no.
So if you have a PlayStation 4 controller or 5, you can
Mhm.
hook it up via USB
Yeah.
to your, Windows 10, 11, whatever, and then
Mhm.
use the remote play option. It's pretty, like if it's on the local network,
Yeah.
it's really fast. Like
Hmm. I gotta
you
try
have to
it.
mute the TV, right?
Right.
But if you're in, let's say, I'm not advocating for this, I'm just saying, and I've thought about it. I haven't done it. Maybe I've done it once a year ago. But if you're
Mhm.
in like a really boring meeting, right?
Mhm.
You can like split screen or whatever and just mute it and just like literally be playing PlayStation
Yeah.
down there, like as a break. Let's say, in all fairness, it's not the messing around outlook that could be construed by a statement like that. It's more like, hey, working through my lunch here. Like, you booked
Right.
this meeting. I'm a little bit behind on Demon Souls here. I'm trying to crush this boss before I get to quaff him. But all right, so wrapping up these bosses, them super hard video games. Any other highlights you want to call out of like disgustingly ridiculousness without cheat codes?
Nope. All I want to say is that the one that took me out, the one that defeated me is Demon Souls to this day. And perhaps I'll take your advice and beat that bully
Yes, you
for
got to
sure.
go back in there, man. Like, look how good you look. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like that bully's you're gonna crush, right?
Yeah.
Um, for me, the one I'll also highlight is anything first person, like
Mhm.
horror. Like, if you can't turn around really quick because you got analog sticks or something, and with surround sound, you hear them behind you and you like start moving like a tank. I'm like, I'm gonna turn around.
Mhm.
Like, it's so slow. That's terrifying. So like,
Right.
for me, anything horror survival has got to be third person, like Resident Evil or
Mhm.
Gears of War. But yeah, so hard things are good for you. That's not a blanket statement. I'm
I
just
hope
I'm
not.
just basically saying that if you don't face these hard demon souls, you'll never be like a heavenly body, or you'll never evolve to the point that you'll crush these things. Um, like we're here to evolve, whether
Mhm.
we like it or not, right?
Yeah.
Um, and we have options, and you could just if you crush these super hard bosses. Now I'm being preachy, so forgive me on that. I'm just trying to motivate people. But okay,
Yeah.
if you choose to crush super hard things outside of your league, or
Mm.
at the time they were, it will put you into such a it will evolve your character in real life, that you'll
Yeah.
start using those techniques of like what you learn there in the real world.
Right.
You know, don't get used to easy stuff, but don't slam the hard bosses all day long. Like, don't play Shadow of the Colossus where it's
Yeah.
all bosses.
Right.
You know, like that's a little hard to take. But yeah,
Yeah. No. And I'll tell you one thing, man. Like, adversity really introduces a man to himself. You want to know yourself?
yeah,
You face adversity, and you'll know yourself.
yeah. That is
Final
very true.
words of wisdom.
That is very true. So, everyone out there, face adversity in the kindest way possible so you can evolve your Pokemon from a Pichu to a Pikachu to a Raichu. So, you can just send that bolt of lightning from Thor's God's grace, right? And crack a dawn. Whatever. Friggin', that's when the nootropic's wearing off. But thanks, everyone, for tuning in to this week's episode of CodePlay Culture. Releasing weekly episodes on health, mental, physical health and wellness, video games, coding, cultural changes around all these things, and just how to improve your life from a neurological biohacking perspective and more. I'm your host, Logan, and co-host, Rui.
Rui.
See you guys later, and we'll see
Goodbye.
you next time.